Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. So yeah, this is a two-parter. Stick around. We're going to do 30 minutes from now until 4:20. Nice. And then we're going to bring out the second panel for another 30-minute session. So let's get ready to do this thing. First panel, the builders. Take a seat. All right. Everybody give the builders a hand. They're going to do a quick intro, and then we'll get going on questions. Yeah. All right, so we are going to do tweet-length introductions. When I mean quick intro, I mean quick intro. But I just want to know where you each are all coming from so we can have this conversation with a little context for the crowd out there. I'm going to start with you, Alex. Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm test. Can you hear me?
Mic check.
Test. Awesome. Okay, I'm Alex. I'm from Near. Next.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm on the Avalabs BD team, building on Avalanche.
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm CEO of Metis.
Hi, I'm Lee. Can you guys guess which project I'm from? I'm from Harmony, and we do uniform sharding with proof of stake. We're building bridges to all the blockchains. Maybe that's why I'm on this panel.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth. I work at ChainSafe. In my time, I've worked on Polkadot, Cosmos, various interop protocols, so that's why I'm here.
All right, that's the panel. Okay, here we go. Let's do this thing. All right, so you hear a lot about the multi-chain future, but you go to DeFi Llama and you kind of realize that we're in a multi-chain present. So before we get going on sort of future-looking prospects, I kind of want to put you on the spot for the multi-chain present. What is working? What is not? Where are we? I'm going to pick on Lee to start for that one.
Cool. So yeah, that was going to be my opening comment, that it's not the multi-chain future, it's the multi-chain present today. And what you really see that's working is all these ecosystems are growing, like all these projects up here, and they all have really great communities. And this is great. We're bringing in millions of people into Web3 from all of our communities. And what's working today is that diversity. And the next thing that this whole industry is moving towards is bridging, right? We see every attempt of every flavor of bridges, and it's really about making them trustless and secure and easier ultimately for developers and users. So I guess, so what's working is, the multi-chain world is here. What's not working is bridges need to get better. The user experience need to get better. I shouldn't have to have, I still need to have 10 wallets on 10 chains to do all the things I want to do. It should just really be one wallet, and that's able to connect to all the chains and abstract that away from the users. So I'll start with that.
All right, so Alex, I'm gonna ask the same question to you, but a little bit differently. Lane mentioned in the intro, right? Like, oh, we're all here because we love Ethereum, but we love other chains too, right? So the multi-chain future, what is the multi-chain future seeking to accomplish?
So chains are not born equal. There are different chains that are good at different things. Some of them scale better. Some of them provide better security. Some of them have usability tailored towards different people. And today they all siloed with several bridges already up and running, many of them yet to be built. So ideally, in the future, if I have assets on one chain that happen to be the chain where I started, this has happened to be the chain that my friend introduced me to, where my first NFT is born, and then I hear about other chain with another project where I can use it, I should be able to easily move it from one to another without thinking much about it. So I guess in the multi-chain future, ideal users shouldn't think much about where their assets are, and they just interact with the multiverse, and it's just all transparent for them. So that's the future today. Today it's neither transparent nor boundless. So yeah, lots to be built.
All right, cool. Lee, I'm glad you brought up sort of this cross-chain, this bridge season that we've seen of late. I think there's been a lot of talk lately about cross-chain versus multi-chain. I think sparked largely in part by a Vitalik post last month and then that wormhole hack that followed a couple weeks thereafter. What's like that current, I just want some comments on sort of the current dichotomy of cross-chain, multi-chain, a precision of language, and how should we be having this conversation. I'm going to put I'm going to put Elizabeth from ChainSafe on the spot for that one, since she's working with a lot of networks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so to be honest, I don't exactly know the definition of multi-chain versus cross-chain. I don't think any of us really know, just because this is super new. But from my point of view, cross-chain is something more like bridging distinct chains versus multi-chain. Yeah, that's cross-chain, which is distinct bridges. And then cross-chain, which is more along the lines of layer 2 solutions, roll-ups, scaling like one specific chain, with the security sort of being on one base chain in a way. Not sure if this is everyone else's definition, but this is kind of how I think of it. So.
That's cool. Good times. Thank you. The hype section, I appreciate you. Good looking out. So yeah, the thing that was interesting about the Vitalik post that I thought was interesting was that Vitalik said he was pessimistic on a cross-chain future, but was very optimistic about a multi-chain future, relating to some of the security strengths of a cross-chain sort of interoperability dynamic. Are you seeing that in the work that you're doing? Is that the state of play that we are in right now as it relates to this multi-chain vision? I guess I'm going to put Eric from Avalanche on the spot on that one, actually. So if you want to tackle that one, go ahead.
Yeah, here in Avalanche, we really don't see it as like one chain versus another, right? For any chain to succeed nowadays, you need bridges, you need ways to be interoperable with other chains. And you know that kind of infrastructure as it gets built, it's all pretty experimental right now. It does add another layer of risk. And as dApps are considering, starting on one chain and then moving on to another, right? They have to take that into account. And I think when they are thinking about bridging their token, bridging their NFT, messaging bridges, anything that involves more than one chain, I think that's gonna be an important factor to consider. And I think a lot of dApp teams, they really they might not put as much thought into it as I think they should.
All right, Elena, I got to get you on the board here. When it comes to cross-chain security, like how is that top of mind for your work? Like how are you sort of making sure that we don't see another wormhole in a few weeks?
Well, the honest answer, we don't, because that is something that it's up to the bridge that is crossing the funds over. So first of all, we need to protect the bridge. And second of all, we need to make sure that the chain that we also relay the funds on is decentralized enough that 51% attack, if it happens, our funds are still safe. Is it happening in the real world right now? All the chains decentralized? Well, no, they're not. And they probably will not be in the near future while we fighting this, cost over decentralization or speed over decentralization, the trilemma, right? So we focus on the decentralization, and we know that the funds of our people will be safe if we suffer the 51% attack. But once we cross to another chain that is not decentralized, well, it's a big question and it's a big risk. So this is kind of disaster that's waiting to happen. Hopefully it never happen. But this is something also for ETH Denver, for the hackers. If you can solve this for us, we're golden. Please do it. Please provide us with the solutions. We rely on the community for that.
All right, good call there, good call there. All right, I'm going to go back to the post because I thought another really interesting thing from this cross-chain, multi-chain Vitalik post was this line. There really are a few separate communities with different values, and it's better for them to live separately rather than fight for influence over the same thing. So we have some layer ones here. I think it's an interesting question, and we have someone who's worked with a lot of layer ones, and I'm going to get to the end here, and she's going to be my arbiter of truth. But I want to put this to each of you guys representing these various layer ones, because I think it is interesting, sort of the cultural aspect here. So I'm going to start with Alex. So do you think that the values of near in your instance are different from those of Ethereum? And if so, how?
That's an interesting question. I think that generally if you walk between communities and look at the values, a lot of values are the same. So I think crypto community generally has a lot of values which are similar. And that's one of the reasons why this venue cannot fit all the people, because people like coming to people who think alike. Like I guess all of us here want to have privacy of data, control over our power to transact, etc. There are differences in the communities, right? So I think some communities are more focused on creators, some community more focused on DeFi, some communities are more focused on various aspects of DAOs, etc. However, I think generally all the layer 1 protocols are quite agnostic to that, right? So whether you choose Near or Polkadot or Cosmos, etc., or Ethereum, they all work. You can deploy NFTs on all of them. You can launch DAOs on all of them, right? So this is more of the communities forming themselves. So I think this is exactly where cross-chain future. So yeah, I guess I disagree with. I don't fully agree with Vitalik on this. I think that chains layer 1 is sufficiently general purpose not to have those specialization, and that's exactly why we need why we need to remove boundaries so that people who are into NFTs, they don't have to be on a specific chain which happened to be early on more focused on NFTs, so they can move easily between them, so that they can move to a marketplace which exists on another chain which happens to be better at this particular point. So that if we have a DAO, then DAO could use that you can participate in the DAO no matter on which chain you initially coming from, no matter where your assets live, etc. Yeah.
All right, same question to Eric. Speaking for Avalanche, what are the cultural differences, if any? And do you kind of agree with this statement that is sort of posited by Vitalik in this post?
Yeah, I think Alex really hit the nail on the head when he said, most of crypto, we're all kind of built from the same DNA, right? We all value decentralization for the most extent. We all value scalability as far as the new layer 1s are concerned. And I think, within each layer 1, there are distinct communities being built, distinct ecosystems. And that's really kind of the reflection, I think, of the difference that I think Vitalik had alluded to, right? It's really, and I think each layer 1 has its kind of pros and cons, right? Some are better built for DeFi, some are better built for NFTs, some are better built for, kind of DAOs and kind of metaverse type projects, right? And at Avalanche here, we really try to cover all the bases. Right now, we're seeing a big growth in DeFi over the past year, and we're trying to really lean in on that, right? But other areas can't be ignored. And I think, as each layer 1 develops, they will have a very distinct community. So when dApps are choosing to deploy on each layer 1, choosing a home chain to deploy on, for instance, at first, right? I think they're going to really kind of look into that, right? Look under the hood and see, what does this community really value, right? And that's going to be reflected in Twitter posts. That's going to be reflected in blog posts, different forums. And I think that's going to be the way that different chains kind of develop over time.
All right, Elizabeth, I'm going to pick on you because you have a hype section, first of all, which is tight. Second of all, ChainSafe works with a bunch of different networks, so I think you have an interesting perspective on this. Culturally, are these communities distinct? Do they have different values? Are they separate enough at this point, or are they all pretty much the same?
I'm going to agree with Vitalik and say yes, they are distinct because yes, we all share the same values by being in blockchain. However, the protocols themselves on both a code, protocol, and community level are quite distinct, and that's why they're distinct protocols. Like for example, like Polkadot values shared security. That's why there's a relay chain that all the parachains plug into. Cosmos values sovereignty more, which is why you're not forced to share security with some sort of relay chain. Like you can have your own more distinct chain that kind of has its own security. Ethereum obviously is Ethereum and is just the OG. So yeah, so I think, yeah, I agree with Vitalik. Yeah, and just being in all the communities, like the values are distinct as well. Hard to say exactly, but it's definitely a feeling you get that, yeah, every chain, even ones that aren't like specifically interoperability chains, such as like Polkadot, Cosmos, etc. Like every chain does have its own values, because obviously if two chains had the exact same values, why would they not just merge and become one chain? Like there are chains that value like privacy, there are chains that value scalability, there's chains that value like all sorts of things. And yeah, like all, yeah.
That was a good answer.
Yeah,
Thank you
cool.
All right, Lee, I'm going to bump it down to you. I mean, because when you think about shared values, right, it's also about attracting developers to one chain over the other. So as you think about this with Harmony, like what is the value proposition that Harmony is looking to build as it relates to these other networks?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in our name, right? Harmony, harmony for one and all. But seriously, I think right now you have these distinct communities. Of course, that happens because we're in the early days of this industry where like it's small communities of people, right? We all started as like the founding team where that kind of shapes your early team, early community. But if 5 years from now you're telling me we're still in these little tribes and there's tribalism in blockchain, like this entire industry would have failed to get the world onto this technology that we think is Web3 and can impact and transform the world. So it really we shouldn't be sitting here 5 years from now having the same conversation. We should actually all coordinate as layer ones, right? That I don't really think of this as competition, but once we, today you don't use like the green internet and then the blue internet and then the yellow internet. Like you just have this one uniform technology that anybody can access and anybody can use. And I really hope that's the future.
Got it. And that was harmonious. Thank you so much. A harmonious moment, everyone. All right, Elena, I'm going to put you on the spot as well. What are the things that Metis values that maybe would make it distinct from some of the other networks that people have access to build on?
So first of all, we're focusing on the Web 2 world because we really believe into mass adoption, and that's the way we had it. It's our blockchain space is actually really small. We're about like 3% of the population probably. So the whole big world is out there. And we are creating a value proposition for that world. While we are here all working towards that. And maybe we're competing on the way, but yeah, we all do the same thing, so I agree. What is, for Metis, the values that we believe, and that's what spike the mass adoption, of course, the usability. People need to be able to use whatever we built, and maybe at a couple of clicks of a button, and without this, private keys and all that difficult stuff. So second, it has to be secure, it has to be fast, and then it has to be, like, that's the value that we provide, decentralized. I mean, otherwise, why would they even go to us? Why would they even use us? They can use their, SQL servers that they have already. Amazon, Google, they already have that. So our value is in the decentralization, and that's what we provide. And at Metis, that's what we believe in, and that's what we provide to the current enterprises, to the Web 2. That's why they're excited about it, because they can come onto the blockchain, and no one can shut them down. So that's the freedom that they will have.
All right, I want to put Elizabeth on spot again. I want to talk about sort of EVM, right? I want to talk about EVM maximalism, right? It seems like EVM is like a EVM compatibility seems like a key differentiator in the market right now when it comes to the new base layers. And I wanted to put this to you first and then work our way down the line because we have some interesting perspectives on this one. Do you think like EVM compatibility is still going to be really important down the road, or is that going to wane over time when it comes to people building in new languages and all sorts of that stuff?
Yeah, that's interesting question. I mean, I think the EVM is still going to continue to be extremely popular, and yeah, even a few years from now, we'll probably still be the top kind of like state transition type logic, just because of the fact that there's been so much tooling built on it. Like literally for the past however many years, all of us have been building off of it. All the tooling, like Truffle, smart contracts, like everything is built off of it. And I just think we're not just going to suddenly decide to like throw that away and like move to WASM. Although like sure, like maybe if we went back in time, we would love to do that. But reality is that like we can't really do that. So much has been built on the EVM already, and will continue to be built by the fact that like all of the new layer ones are trying to put in EVM compatibility. So yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, Lee, I was tossing to you. Just very curious for your thoughts on EVM compatibility, and then I definitely want to get Alex on the board for how Near is approaching some of those questions.
Yeah. So we obviously are EVM compatible as well. And I would say that it's really not about what I want. It's much more about what the community wants, and we're here to build something that users want, and our users are developers. And so I'm really more just like, listening to what the community wants, and you guys are going to shape what we build, right? It's not going to be us like coming up with some new fancy programming language that's better than EVM.
Cool. And so Alex, I mean, so Near, what's Near's view on this whole thing?
Yeah, good question. So a blockchain is one more than a couple applications, right? A blockchain is an ecosystem of applications, and there's a massive number of applications already built in EVM. So if you try to spin up a new ecosystem, if your blockchain supports EVM, then you can go talk to every single project. They have nothing to lose if they come to you, right? If you can attract liquidity, if you can attract them, they deploy. For them, it's just changing one parameter in their configuration, and you have an ecosystem bootstrapped. If you have a new virtual machine, it's significantly more effort. So Near, by design, is not an EVM chain. Near runs WASM. WASM, however, has a nice property that WASM is extremely fast, and you can compile low-level languages like C++ and Rust into WASM. Correspondingly, for any other virtual machine you can imagine, it is compilable. It is usually either written in C++ or Rust, so it is compilable to WASM. So that's exactly what Near does. Near has an EVM machine, which is just compiled to WASM. But from perspective of a developer or a user, it is completely transparent. They just connect in MetaMask and they use it, and it works like a charm, right? And so tomorrow, if there's a new fancy VM that everybody likes, it is equally easy to compile into WASM with 0 changes on the protocol level, right? So in order for us to have a VM, 0 changes were made to the protocol itself. Correspondingly, if we want to have adoption from Web 2 people, they actually do not speak Solidity. Web 2 people speak JavaScript, right? So it's very easy to compile a JavaScript interpreter into WASM, deploy on Near. It works very fast, and you can now compile contracts in JavaScript. Same goes for Python interpreter, etc. Right? And today, what happens now is that if you heard of this concept of execution environments that exist, that was plan of Ethereum 2, the idea was to have different execution environments running on different shards. So that effectively exists today on any chain which uses WASM, because you can compile any execution environment, deploy it as a contract, and create tooling for users not to think about it and use it as if it was a execution environment. So today, if you want to have your own EVM chain, if you want to have your own EVM vault, nothing can be easier. You just clone Aurora, deploy your own contract, get their tooling, change the contract name, bam, you have your own EVM chain, which people can just change the chain in the MetaMask and use it, but it's entirely yours with your contracts, with your permissions that you set, etc. It's significant. You don't need to search for your validators. You don't need to deploy your own nodes. It's all running with the security of Near, but you have your own ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned just being able to bootstrap these communities. You know, you look at the TVL rankings, and the only outlier there is Terra. All the other ones are EVM compatible, and in terms of getting projects over at low cost and getting those users to come with them, it seems to be working. Eric, I wanted to ask you a similar question from a BD perspective. Is that a selling point when Avalanche goes out and talks to projects that may be looking to deploy on that network?
Yeah, I would say definitely. EVM compatibility, the way I see it, it's like a low-hanging fruit, right? When we launched Avalanche, we had 2 default chains, the C and X chains. The C chain was EVM compatible, the X chain was a DAG, and the C chain saw just way more usage. And part of it is because EVM is just a little bit more mature, right? It has a lot more developers, it has a lot more tooling, a lot more auditors, right, focused on the EVM. But going forward, I do think that, we are going to see a wider variety of different virtual machines. On Avalanche, you can deploy any number of subnets. Any subnet can have any virtual machine really attached to it. You can choose your validator, say you have a lot of flexibility. And Near, as well as other chains, are offering this as well, right? So I think you will see a wider variety. It just takes a little bit of time, right? Given that the EVM has had like a 4 or 5 year head start.
Got it. All right, we got a few more minutes left. We got 9 minutes left, and then we're going to change up the panel. Let's try to get a little spicy here. All right, I'm going to throw this to Lee. Is there ever going to be too many chains in a multi-chain world? Are we going to see should we stop talking about multi-chain at some point? What's your view on that?
Okay, so I guess that's a 2-part question. Like, there will be natural selection, right? So it's not up to me how many chains there will be. It's really up to the developers and the users. There will probably be some amount of critical mass, right, as some of these chains get bigger, and it gets harder to start new chains. I think there was this moment in time in 2017 and 2018 where all these scaling solutions started, and now you don't see as many of them, right? And so there's a moment in time in this technology curve development where it makes sense to start a new layer 1 blockchain, and probably not, we won't see that kind of boom. So Alex and I actually know each other from back in the days of Bay Area, where were hanging out at the same meetup and getting to know each other when we were starting the projects together. So I think the first answer is there will be some natural selection on the number of chains that will end up growing and surviving. And then I think I forgot your second part of the question.
Yeah, I like the first question. The first question was better. I'll stick on the first question. Elizabeth, how many chains is too many chains? I need just a number.
255.
Okay, that's a big number.
Yeah, I'm gonna say any chains that don't really have that many users are probably not really gonna survive. Yeah, like I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but like Lee said, yeah, I totally agree that there's gonna be lateral selection. Like basically, whatever chain gets some sort of mass amount of users or critical mass is just gonna continue to kind of gain more users just from just having users. Yeah.
Cool. Elena, are you seeing chains find specializations, or is it all mostly the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, I see the very interesting evolution of the chains. Of course, we talked about the EVM standard, and this is just the developer standard. That's for us just to making developer job easier. But all the chains, they have something unique in mind, some unique value proposition, and that is what's very valuable. So I guess it's really, really good that people go in, trying new things, making new offers to developers, and see where it goes. And yeah, as we see, some chains, they just fall through and going nowhere. But other chains, like everybody that on the panel here, all blooming, and they have all their own community. So I guess the community actually shows how good the chain is, how usable it is, and the value that it's providing to people.
Okay, got a few more minutes left. Alex, I'm gonna ask you this question. When will the multi-chain future be over, and when will it just be the multi-chain present? Is there a signal, TVL threshold, something that you look to figure out when the future is here?
No, it's going to be like slowly. There's no threshold.
No threshold. All right. Anyone else have thoughts on that one? When will we stop having multi-chain future panels at crypto conferences? I'm going to put Eric on the spot for that one.
Yeah, so I think for us, right, as part of the Avalanche BD team, our job is really done when our community is kind of self-perpetuating and kind of builds upon itself, right, without our involvement. And I see Ethereum has really reached this point in time where, ETH Denver, right, it's a huge community. Vitalik doesn't need to be involved, right? So I see that, multi-chain present really happening when it happens on multiple chains like that, where each chain has a vibrant community of users, of people building on it, of people, putting out additional content material, right? And the foundation teams kind of take a step back and kind of have a lesser importance, I would say.
Gotcha. Elizabeth, I want to ask you about the Cambrian explosion of ecosystem funds, right? We've seen a lot of investment in getting people to build on some of these green fields that these networks kind of represent at this point. Do you see any chains that are doing those incentive programs better than the others? And at what state do you think we're in? Are we still in the need to incentivize devs before incentivizing users stage? Or I guess that would vary by chain. But curious for your thoughts on ecosystem funding.
Yeah, okay, interesting question. Yeah, I don't personally look into ecosystem funding that much. Like personally, I don't know. I'm not, as a dev, like I'm not super motivated by how much money I'm gonna get working on something. It's more how much value I think a project is gonna bring, and how much it's actually gonna be used and wanted by people. So I think like even if a chain doesn't really have that much value and they offer like a huge grant or fund or whatever for people to build on it, like it's not gonna really attract that many devs or users in my opinion. I don't know, maybe people that just wanna get that big fund will work on it, but yeah, in the long run, I don't really think there's a huge, point of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll ask this of Lee because, you guys have a big one. I think we have 3 big sort of ecosystem funds on stage, actually. What's working for you in terms of attracting developers? Is it a particular type of incentive system that you are finding success in, or what?
Yeah, actually for us, capital is everywhere, which is good. We should have more ecosystem funds anyway and invest in emerging economies invest in people who haven't had the opportunities to be able to build in this space. But for us, it's really what we've seen that works is standardizing all of our grants so that we can give them out as fast as possible. So every week we're giving out on average 10 grants. Hopefully we'll give out 50 at ETH Denver. So if you find anybody in a blue hoodie or a t-shirt or a beanie, go talk to them. But it's really about the skill and making the grant standardized so that everyone knows, like, this is exactly what we're doing. The team knows, you guys know what you're getting, and we don't like sit around and negotiate. This is not a venture capital firm. Like, we're not here for our IRR or whatever they have. So it's really like getting it into your hands as fast as possible and getting it to as many people as possible, and incentivizing people who have been on the fringes, like in emerging economies, women developers. We funded actually 300 scholars just to come to ETH Denver. 200 of them were women, and so that's the idea. We're just going to keep this going as fast as we can.
Alex, I want to ask for your approach on ecosystem funding. We got 50 grants on the table right here. Can you top 50 grants?
Well, it's not the quantity, right? So one thing we do is NEAR has multiple entities which extend grants, and those entities they focus on very different areas and have very different values in mind when they work with founders, and so therefore there's significantly more work towards aligning the fund and the founders. It's usually more than just a fund. If we give a grant, we also want to support people. We want them to be a part of the community, right? And the crypto ecosystem is very large, right? So if you put all the people all across the board into the same community, it is going to be less helpful than concentrated communities that help each other around a particular application, right? So we have one that is concentrated on creators called Human Guild. We have Foundation gives a lot of grants itself. We have Proxima. We have Aurora, which gives grants for EVM. So it's not quantity, it's quality. So it's all around aligning on values, providing value to founders.
All right. So it's 4:20. We're going to switch out the panel. Part 2 is about to start. But first, please give this wonderful panel of Biddlers a big round of applause.